Have you ever wondered what the real life of medieval assassins was like? In the video, Bloody Mystery, the tragic life of a medieval assassin, we will step into the dark darkness of the Middle Ages, where there is no legendary halo, only hunger, despair, and extreme loneliness. From the first moment holding a knife, assassins have to go through expensive lessons, training without hinges, primitive equipment, clever disguises, and even life-and-death traps in fortresses and palaces. You will discover the silent motive that pushes people into the profession known as the last profession of human life. Painful lessons through missed knives, mistakenly drinking poison, and the nightmare of torture with no way out. Sophisticated disguises, from fake monks to shabby peasants, how they hide in the crowd. The fragile moment of victory and the endless journey of escape in the dark night. The end is not glorious, just the anonymous silence of an unmarked grave. Don't miss the in-depth analysis, authentic historical documents, and new perspectives on the dead and alive life of the medieval assassin. Join me in turning the dark pages of history, where blood and the oath of silence intersect, and find out why no one dares to dream of a peaceful life after holding a knife. Click subscribe and turn on the notification bell to not miss the latest videos about history, mystery, and real characters of the past.
Part 1. Introduction. The false glamour of the assassin profession. Night falls with a gloomy sky full of stars. The scene is so quiet that you can hear the whisper of the wind through the castle door. In that moment, the image of a medieval assassin appears. A dark shadow gliding over the castle wall, a hood covering most of his face, a knife flashing in his hand. Is that a symbol of mysterious power, of a sought-after profession, glorified in action movies that fill the screen? Or is it just a flashy illusion covering up the harsh and cruel lives? In reality, no one wakes up at dawn and cheerfully says, "Today I will secretly stalk the nobles, past the moat and the guards, to earn a few silver coins and honor?" The mission of purging the guilty in the Middle Ages was not like a romantic epic. There was no up and down background music guiding each step. It was the sound of heavy breathing, the beating of the heart with each knife strike, the hot breath from the tense hand, and finally, the cold loneliness in the dark. In the world of movies, assassins are cloaked in legendary cloaks, known as invisible servants, the one who passes like the wind, with extraordinary skills, dodging arrows, somersaulting through windows, disappearing as if they never existed. However, the real story is as harsh as an unforeseen disaster. People do not start with candlelight training sessions, are not taught through esoteric textbooks, and there are no experts watching the training project. They took this path when hunger, desperation, and social contempt pushed them to the edge. They did not choose to be assassins like sailors, farmers, or even prisoners of war who were drafted into the army. They were people who had been drowned by life, ex-soldiers suddenly unemployed, families whose property had been lost, escaped prisoners, or marginalized peoples who had been driven out. When there was nothing left to lose, when every silver coin was their last breath, they accepted the price of eternal silence. There were no medals, no plaques, and certainly no invitations to royal banquets to receive praise. Instead, they were met with scorn and suspicion. They had to stand quietly on the sidelines, under the dim lights of taverns, keeping absolutely silent about themselves. Every casual question, "What do you do for a living?" could end in a cold knife slashing across their throats. The strangest thing is, people don't believe in their profession. "Assassin? You must be kidding me?" the villagers sneered. They vaguely imagined the figure of the one who silently shot arrows, spread poison, or lurked in the dark. Thinking of them, people imagined someone with a magical sword, skillfully operating like a brave warrior. But in reality, all you saw was a hunchbacked figure, patched clothes, and fearful eyes that flashed with the fear that a mistake would send them to hell. Most medieval assassins were amateurs. They had never held a sword, but they had to learn how to pierce armor, find veins, and disguise fresh wounds. There was no training, no mentors. All they had to do was taste pain, the pain of the knife cutting, and taste fear, the fear of the sound of snails squeaking on thatched roofs. And with just one clack on a wooden plank, the whole plan was exposed. Lives were lost. Don't be fooled by the illusion of honor as an assassin. They have no reward room, no record of achievements. Who knows about the wages? They receive them in advance and then pay back the debt of blood. The hirer disappears before they can open the money bag. Or worse, the hirer sets a trap, waits for the assassin to disappear, and then coldly raises the second blade. Many would rather die than be deceived, because at least death can bring an end, while betrayal is just a series of painful days with no way out. That's why no one stood up and
Pot high. Motive, not glory, but survival. Following the flickering candlelight in the wine cellar, you will see trembling hands counting worn-out silver coins. It is not a moment of glory, but the sigh of a life driven to the end. Most of those who carry the label of medieval assassins are not golden shadows. They are hungry ghosts, throbbing with thirst for the sad coins, waving before their eyes like fresh bait to save their fragile lives. People say that becoming an assassin is the last choice. When they have no family, no fields, no honor, they drift like a withered leaf in the cold wind to the foot of the wall. The one who used to be a poor farmer, when the harvest failed, had his land taken away by the owner, and was exiled to the dark lair of the mine. The one who used to wear a mighty soldier's uniform, when he returned, was no different from a ghost wearing a piece of rusty armor, with no support. The one who used to hold a bamboo knife, when he fell, became a pickpocket, floating in the dark underworld. When all the exits are closed, the assassin profession opens like the narrowest door, enough for you to crawl through. The rest is the abyss below. Hunting for a living. It sounds bitter, but that was the contract of the times. You will not see them singing the opening song, wearing solemn robes, holding powerful spears. Instead, they carry on their backs the heavy burden of cold stones called debt and shame. Each mission marks a sentence. If they fail, it will not only mean death, but also a series of days of physical and mental torture. But even knowing the dark prospect, they still have to risk their lives, because on the other side of that boundary is the ultimate cruelty: hunger, humiliation, or being targeted by all enemies. 1. Money, an obsession that won't let go. Someone once said that there are only two things that can bring people down: love and money. In the world of assassins, love has died since society turned its back, and money reigns like an invisible idol. Money first, blood later. People don't give all their money up front. It's usually half first, half second. The first half is for you to hire out. The second half, will you live long enough to continue asking for it? Golden trap. Many contracts are just a cover to lure you into a trap.
By the time you get through the door, the hirer has disappeared, or worse, thrown you into temporary detention until luck finally runs out. Old fox, fat bait. Nobles, officials, bishops are almost all too rich to get their hands dirty, but too cowardly to hire someone with clear documents. They are willing to spend lavishly to eliminate threats, but that money smells of death, and the person holding it may not survive to enjoy it. But no matter what, when their hearts are hardened, they still grit their teeth and accept the cold silver, because it is not glory, but a ticket, however cruel, to tomorrow. 1. Money, an obsession that won't let go. Someone once said that there are only two things that can bring people down: love and money. In the world of assassins, love has died since society turned its back, and money reigns like an invisible idol. Money first, blood later. People don't give all their money up front. It's usually half first, half second. The first half is for you to hire out. The second half, will you live long enough to continue asking for it? Golden trap. Many contracts are just a cover.
Ba training. No action scenes. When they crossed the boundary between life and death, medieval assassins were not welcomed by drums and gongs or court music. There were no dignified teachers explaining the doctrine of the art of killing under flickering candlelight. There were no opening ceremonies, no instruction manuals, no welcome new recruits banners. Instead, those destined to become assassins had only one curriculum: experience drawn from the dark. Bachamut, learning through wounds and bloodstains. Without going through combat drills or battlefield simulations, assassins learn to hold knives, use nooses, and make poison with expensive tuition, pain, and blood. First failure? The knife missed the joint, the hand slid onto the keyboard and made a click sound. The first lesson in hitting the right point. All was just a bloody, ulcerated experience. Second, poisoning. Wanting to hide the drug in wine to convince, they used plants and insect venom. No dosage instructions, just trial and error, paying with their own lives if too wrong. Third time, avoiding. Hearing the footsteps of the guards, tried to run and hold the wall, fell headlong into the hay. Back was torn open, heart clenched with fear of exposing my tools. Each wound is a word, chaurai. Each drop of blood on the floor is a reminder. Never make the same mistake twice. Bahai, lack of mentors and secrets. While knights were forged over years on iron horses, assassins lived in exile, with no place called school. All the knowledge they acquired came from. They hang out in the mines and night markets, where they listen to rumors and learn the tricks of professional thieves. The old guys, sometimes they meet an old assassin who has just given up the profession, only to reveal his secrets when drunk. Spying, standing behind a tree watching soldiers practice, or learning how guards quickly eat a loaf of bread to know the hours of court life. But it was all piecemeal, unsystematic. They measured every step, every breath, sharpened their knives by carrying rocks, and shaped their skills by accidentally exposing their traces with a sneeze. Baba, rough equipment. Movies often boast of sophisticated daggers, silent crossbows, or eyes that can see through walls. In real life, an assassin's equipment consists of rusty knife borrowed from the guard, sharpened on a broken rock, silver rope stolen from a textile factory,
fast to tie, but easy to slip. The poisonous powder was scattered in the rice basket, unable to separate its ingredients, sometimes strong, sometimes weak. Wood chips or pieces of tile, point, throw, replace gun. Any clanging sound when swinging a knife, any rusty smell, or the pungent smell of poisonous powder could be a telltale sign, and that was the beginning of the tragedy. There was no warranty for the equipment, no replacement shop. 4. Lời kỹ xảo time. A good assassin is not only good at hiding his knife, but also good at hiding his fear. Footwork. They learn to stomp their feet lightly, walking like ghosts. Each step requires hundreds of adjustments, from tiptoeing to lowering their feet. Every sound memorized to avoid repetition. Breath-holding technique. Use a leaf or dirty towel to cover your mouth. Try to release the breath slowly. Avoid sniffling or gasping. Observing light and shadow. They know the location of every stone, every wall crack, every place with the least moonlight to hide. Even the smallest gap is enough to shine light on a person's figure, transmitting a signal of death. There is no instructor to train you. The secret lies in the ability.
Part 4. Goal. Never be easy prey. Having learned how to bleed through wounds, sharpen knives on rocks, and satisfy every hunger without collapsing, the medieval assassin enters the most intense phase, confronting the target. This is not a rehearsal in the darkness of a mine, but a real theater of death, where any small mistake leads to the ultimate consequence, death or cruel torture. 4.1. Nobles, bishops, rulers, the real subjects. No one is paying you silver to test your skills on anonymous villagers. The hirers are always after powerful targets. Baron is greedy with the treasure hidden in the castle vault. The rich bishop behind the spiritual throne is so rich that the 12 guards surrounding him are worth buying. Court guest, someone with voice and power, enough to overthrow a power or declare war. The target is not simply someone, but someone with guards, steel doors, sophisticated warning systems, and, of course, suspects, informants, and packs of coyotes on the prowl. 4.2. Moats, walls, and guards. A castle is more than just a big house. It's a fortress full of traps. Deep moat, cold water, sometimes muddy, full of turtles and small monsters that bite and bleed. One wrong step and you could lose both your knife and your life. The walls are thick, not just 1 meter, but maybe 3 or 4 meters of piled up laterite. Climbing up with a handmade hook, you lose strength and wind, and accidentally inhale lime dust, enough to be detected. The iron door and the padlock are tight. You have no key. To get through, you have to open it by hand, remove the hinges, and train for Marai in the dungeon. Every metallic sound is a warning to the guards. And when you think you're invisible, remember there's standing guard. Each door is a guard post. In the left corner, a sleeping soldier. In the right corner, a awake soldier. Any mistake you make will be seen by the awake one. Random patrols. They don't follow a set schedule. They take turns, go around, back and forth, making it impossible for you to memorize their footsteps and flashlight beams. Alarm system, just one click on the wooden frame or one strong stomp on the stone floor, and nightmares will spread throughout the fortress in an instant. 4.3.
eyes of the servant and the ears of the chef. Not only gods, but also countless hidden eyes and ears. Servants, maids, sleeping guards, they were all listening. Even whispers in hidden corners were transmitted to the leader's ears. Chef and diner, the kitchen is the intelligence umbrella. Every food and drink that the bishop enjoys goes through multiple stages of surveillance. This makes poisoning or switching drinks a risky adventure. Hounds and watchdogs, their noses are sharper than any alarm system. A whiff of something strange will set them off, alerting the entire sentry pack. To bypass this passport, the assassin had to study the life of the inner palace, secretly listening to every schedule and every habit, meal times, prayer times, stable cleaning times. That was the secret of informal training, collecting every detail to locate weak points. Bonchambon, traps and wild animals. The fortress has no shortage of natural weapons. The smell of toxic smoke from the boiling oil pot was choking, ready to be poured into the trench when an intruder was detected. A spring-loaded wooden floor.
Part Num. Disguise. From fake monk to shabby peasant. Having finally conquered the moment of silence in the setting of moat and wall, the medieval assassin enters the disguise, the unique dance of making himself non-existent. Disguise is not a magic trick, but a smooth combination of creativity, daring, and a little desperation. However, it is in that tattered shirt that the seemingly invisible people most clearly reveal their figure, demeanor, and soul. 5.1. Rough camouflage, everyday cover. In a world without hoods or cloaks, assassins must blend in with the crowd. Torn shirts, muddy scarves. Most of them chose faded clothes, carved into old shoes, covered in road dust. Who would notice someone who hadn't bathed for 2 weeks? No one. Disguised as masons or farmers, they used shovels, hoes, or bamboo baskets to toil through the streets leading to the city gates. The noise of their hoes disturbed the stone courtyard, further convincing the guards that they were just harmless laborers. Pretending to be a monk. Some people borrow a rough robe, wear a rosary, and mumble prayers. No one asks much of a monk wandering through the village. However, the crudeness of the cover is a double-edged sword. It protects you from prying eyes, but the slightest flaw is enough to expose the plot. 5.2. The secret to acting in the dark. Disguise is not only about the costume, but also the way of acting. Voice and accent. They practice speaking with a lisp like a native, or mumbling like someone who has lost their teeth. Many assassins practice in front of the mirror, cutting out "going somewhere" as drodoran to avoid being shouted at. Innocent gestures. Every glance, every turn of the head must be like a real corn-sweeping farmer, slow, clumsy. They pretend to lean on a cane, groan in back pain, make noise while bandaging fake wounds. Homemade masks. A sweaty piece of cloth draped across the face. A mouth vaguely exhaling cigarette smoke in a manly style. Or a rag wrapped around the nose and mouth. Who cares? The acting is perfect when not only the appearance but also the inner feelings are hidden. They swallow the panic in their throat, push the anxiety deep into their heart, and smile softly at passers-by. 5.3. Pitfalls of fake clothes.
The peasant's cloak, the monk's shawl, is not magic. It attracts dust, it attracts odors, and this is the danger. The smell of sweat and smoke. Some layers of fabric are so old they are soaked with the smell of kitchen smoke and musty sheep wool. A careful person will sniff it with his hand and discover that you are not a carpenter, but a stranger. Old blood on your shirt. Sometimes assassins hide blood from a previous murder in their clothing. But dried blood leaves a brown, fishy smell, enough to make the villagers avoid you, making you a suspect. Mismatched buttons. Counterfeit clothing often has mismatched buttons and seams, which makes connoisseurs realize it is stolen, not newly made. To overcome this, the assassin must master the techniques of cleaning bloodstains, smoke blowing the fabric, and even patching buttons and seams before entering the fortress. 5.4. Subtle disguise, advanced camouflage. For high-ranking targets, bishops, counts, they resorted to more sophisticated disguises. Muddy nails. Following the example of farmers, they soak their hands in mud, leaving their nails rough, showing that they have just
6.1. No guild. Systemic isolation. In medieval Europe, most professions had guilds, rules, and ranks of skilled craftsmen. Assassins, however, did not have an official guild of assassins, despite what Hollywood and novels often portray. There was no collective training regime. Secret documents were hidden in monasteries or fortresses, but were not widely available or accessible. There was no central headquarters. They wandered everywhere, rented lodgings, slept in the market, and hugged blankets alone in bars. There was no meeting room, no initiation ceremony. There are no honest neighbors. They cannot declare their background, cannot reveal their profession to make friends. Any stranger who asks too much becomes an object to be eliminated or object to be avoided. When a hitman seeks out a colleague to share tips with, he finds only rumors and legends. There are those who walk through the night and no one sees them go. Every rumor is a mixture of truth and fiction, giving him no reassurance that there are others who share his fate. 6.2. Casual relationships and lurking betrayal. In the assassin profession, personal relationships cannot be based on camaraderie or friendship, but often take the form of temporary transactions. Meet the hirer, rarely face-to-face, usually through a middleman, a dubious middleman who only knows the name and the time of the appointment. You are A, I am B, task C, money D. Then they disappear, leaving you with an invisible contract. Interact with the market folk. Disguised as carpenters or buskers, they can exchange information. But how often does the news from the tavern turn out to be fake news? The market folk can be hired henchmen or simply bounty hunters. Temporary cooperation with thieves. Sometimes assassins meet professional thieves to borrow tools or learn lockpicking techniques. But thieves and assassins are both outlaws. Close association only brings mutual trouble, easily turning into a double trap. All of these relationships are measured in terms of immediate benefits and absolute risk. That is, the more you trust someone, the more likely you are to fall prey to a web of betrayal. 6.3. Tenants' treason. Hiring assassins is not a nice thing. They see assassins as disposable tools. Even if the assassin completes the task excellently, many hirers immediately dispose of the evidence, refusing to pay the remaining amount. On New Year's Eve, the tenant disappears with the money bag or gives the excuse of being arrested, thieves robbed the money. Set traps to kill. Some contracts are just bait for the enemy. After clearing the way, the hirer orders his accomplices to capture the assassin as a criminal. Hiring a spy. Once the mission is complete, the assassin becomes a threat. The hirer sends a second person to eliminate them, preventing information leaks. This betrayal creates paranoia. The assassin does not dare to disperse the money he has earned, does not dare to ask for information about the hirer. does not dare to leave any traces. He only trusts himself and the knife in his hand. 6.4. Fear of the vast net of heaven. No one knows tomorrow. The feudal police, court troops, local courts were always on the lookout for assassins. If caught, they faced brutal torture and public hanging as a deterrent. Fanatical villagers. After a sudden death, they blame it on a ghost or witch lurking in the woods. They hunt down, chase down, and burn the suspect alive. Competitive assassin community. Rumor has it that a new assassin has appeared. They set up a plot to test their abilities or eliminate their rivals. Killers live in fear of someone lurking around. They can't sleep well, can't trust anyone, not even the person they used to drink with. Every knock on the door, every footstep on the stairs can be a death sentence. 6.5. Loneliness in the soul. In the middle of the night, the killer is not only physically alone, but also mentally alone. Unable to share their feelings. They do not talk about their wounds, their blood, or their obsessions with their best friends, because they do not have any best friends. All the stories are buried deep inside, becoming haunting ghosts. Loss of family connection. When they become assassins, they lose their identity. No one recognizes them as fathers, sons, or brothers. Their families may bury them as cursed or shun them for self-protection.
Part 7. Failure. The price is torture and death. Entering the world of medieval assassins, failure is not simply not completing the mission. It is the end of life. A series of days of physical and mental torture, a death sentence hanging over the neck, and fear sharpening every heartbeat. Here, there is no re-examination, only the unpredictable consequences of fatal mistakes. 7.1. Expensive lesson from the first missed knife attempt. When the moonlight shines on a short knife, just one missed beat. The knife misses the bone. The knife does not penetrate the throat, but instead slides into the ribcage, creating a clang sound on the armor, an alarm signal that rings throughout the fortress. At that moment, from the darkness, swords and spears are raised. The guards rush in and cut you down. There is no time to run away. Falling off the wall. You cling to the wall to climb up to the bedroom window. Your foot slips and you fall into the deep moat. The cold water immediately paralyzes you. Your hands tremble and drop your weapons, and finally, the big fish below forever drowns your chance of survival. Each miss is not a chance to make amends. It is a moment when, somewhere inside, the last of humanity is extinguished, giving way to overwhelming despair. 7.2. Consequences of failure, pursuit, and betrayal. Failing the first assassination means you become a double target. Victim side. The surviving noble or bishop, knowing who touched him, immediately puts a bounty on the attacker. The hirer. They do not pay the promised amount. On the contrary, they put a second and third person to hunt you down. The result is death sentence when the court demands it. When you are captured alive, you are not given a normal trial. The feudal judge immediately orders torture to reveal the identity of the national traitor, then executes you publicly to set an example. Dealing with the back. If you are lucky enough to escape the fortress, you will be ambushed on the way to escape, as the tenant and the enemy combine, chasing every step. As soon as you rest, they will rush to arrest you. There is no avenue of appeal. Failure is final. 7.3. Torture, the threshold before death. It is believed that suspended sentences are harder to break than shackles, but for killers, torture is the most bizarre shackle. Hooking the knife blade into your fingernails and ankles. Prison alley near the city wall. The guards tie you tightly to a wooden frame. Iron hooks dig into your flesh, pulling every second every time you don't tell who hired you. Slitting the skin to get the tendons. Using a knife to cut the skin, pull out the tendons in the legs and arms, forcing you to confess. Blood flows like a river. The wound haunts the lungs for life. Boiling water, hot coals. Sometimes they dip you in a pot of boiling water, then press hot coals against your back, eyelids, lips. Screams echo throughout the ramparts. In that moment, your mind will be in agony.
If you can't bear it, you can confess. But confession will end your life. The hirer is exposed. The hirer's family will frantically hunt you down, and the court will try you for a double crime of conspiracy to murder plus treason. 7.4. Public condemnation, public execution. When torture is not enough to satisfy the anger of the elite, they expose you to the public. Hanging by the head. Tie to a hanger, jerk the knees down to suddenly break the neck. Crane. 4 limbs tied to 4 horses. Continuous muscle segment, broken bones, flesh gradually thinning on the empty frame. Nailing. Iron nails are driven into the palms and soles of your feet, causing you to groan in pain and slowly die. They hung your body on the city gate with the announcement, "This is the one who dared to kill the Lord, kill the King, kill the Lord. Whoever dares to follow in his footsteps will receive the same fate." The purpose was not only to punish the individual, but also to warn any students who still harbored the plot. 7.5. Failure on the run. Assuming you are lucky enough to survive the initial torture and manage to escape the fortress in a shower of blood, failure awaits you at every turn. Local information network. In each village, rumors spread like a monsoon. He wears peasant clothes, has a tattoo on his neck. Old scars or dried blood are enough for people to sniff out. Blood-stained footprints. Part 8. Success. Temporary. But still have to run. As the darkness closed in on the cruel torture and the traces of defeat seemed to have disappeared, the medieval assassin finally touched the chaotic moment of victory. The victim collapsed, the door of the room flew open, and a half-empty bag of silver containing a fragile hope of freedom. But the encounter was short-lived, because in the distance, the storm of pursuit had begun to rise, and the footsteps had to rush forward to hold on to life. 8.1. Moment of victory, a silent festival. The sound of the knife passing through the throat. As soon as the pulse stopped, the assassin felt the space shake, the sound of his heart falling silent, and his breathing became strangely slow. It was not joy, but a moment of silence before the spiritual earthquake. The victim's lifeless eyes. The fiery eyes in the last minute are now just dull glass, as if inviting the killer to cross the line between life and death. No bells, no drums. Success was not announced loudly, only the killer's heart beat in his chest, echoing like an alarm drum. At the moment of victory, if someone was observant standing from afar, they would see the lonely figure of the one who had just sowed hatred, huddled in the darkness, not brave enough to hold his breath any longer. 8.2. Drip drip results, in exchange for fragile freedom. A bag of billions of dollars. The most sparkling money is only enough to buy food for a few days, not enough to buy a ticket to escape to another land. Absent power of attorney. Sometimes the hirer hands over a coded piece of paper, promising to smuggle you across the border. But when you arrive at the rendezvous, the paper has rotted, or the person who arranged the meeting has disappeared with the nightmare. Simple weapons. Broken knife handle, loose rope, only enough poison to cover a small wound, cannot be used to carry out the next mission. Remember, that achievement is just the price you pay to keep running. Running not just for the money, but for the nightmare of the hunt that has yet to end. 8.3. New danger, a hidden knife attack. As soon as the assassin reached out to receive the bag of silver, the shadow of the pursuer silently surrounded him. Second hire. With his identity and mask exposed, the original hirer immediately hires someone else to clean up you. Money is no guarantee. On the contrary, it becomes fodder for revenge. Feudal police. Wanted lists were posted all over the route, from the big cities to the fishing villages by the river. Anyone who saw a strange figure reported it and received a generous reward. Jealous colleagues. Other assassins know you just made a fortune. They're ready to ambush you, take your place on the next contract, and double the bonus. Danger twists like tree roots underground, creeping into every hidden corner, waiting for the opportunity to cut off the fragile thread of hope. 8.4. Tracking and stalking. Portrait of the hunter. To find you, the hunter builds a fragmented picture from small links. Scent signals. New coins have a metallic scent and sweat that hasn't had time to dry, enough for scent hounds to detect. Footprints were scattered. Blood was splattered on the road, faded shoe prints left behind. Some villagers picked up bullet and knife casings. Eyewitness accounts. The servant, the drunken guard, or the curious child. Everyone has a story to tell to the police or the second tenant. As the assassins emerged from the inn, they were noted. Skinny, haggard, with a glittering silver pouch at their waist. It was not difficult for the pursuer to recognize the man who had just escaped the command post. 8.5. Running in the dark. Escape strategy. The assassin is forced to turn victory itself into a weapon of survival. Following the rain. The night rain poured down, water gushed up from the road, obliterating footprints and the smell of blood. The rain was a signal curtain, helping the killer blend into the anonymous crowd. Change direction abruptly. Instead of taking the shortest route, they crossed fields, jumped into rivers, and followed slippery rocks. Each step a risk, but also a chance to fool their pursuers. Hiding in the circus. When hearing the sound of the lion drum, the killer disguised himself as a lion dancer, hid in the paper hats, and blended in with the wandering artists. They sang a cheerful song to cover up their panting. Escape tactics don't have a perfect script. They're a combination of flexibility.
No retirement for the Dark One. After a long and dark journey, from the moment of the first swing of the knife, through hunger, lessons in torture, disguises, solitude, and escape, the medieval assassin finally reaches the end, but not in glory or peace, but in the long and painful agony of a life without end. There is no retirement, no leisure, only days of continuing to hide or ending in absolute loneliness. 9.1. Dream of a home, the beginning of unhappiness. Some assassins, in rare moments of calm, dream of a home. The narrow house on the edge of the forest, a thatched hut, roofed with forest leaves, where they hope to grow vegetables, raise chickens, and live in peace. An old brick house, by the red fire, sitting and reminiscing about the past, holding hands with an anonymous lover. Second family, a few orphaned children, lonely old people. They hope they can change their fate, protect the weak. But all dreams were shattered when they realized. A sudden knock on the door. Even during the day, even quietly, sometimes just a knock is enough to wake up an old nightmare. The eyes of feudal policemen. They sneaked around, waiting for familiar shoe prints, faint bloodstains on gloves. Local warning. Villagers, upon hearing the rumor, will light torches and go searching. They are disappointed, angry, and then just hearing a whisper of "he is a killer" will cause the whole society to rush in. Home never became a shelter, only a distant memory. 9.2. Running forever without getting tired. The journey of being chased endlessly. The assassin was forced to keep moving, constantly changing lodgings. Every time they see the innkeeper's face looking a little suspicious, they move to another area. Crossing the border. They quietly crossed the border gate into the neighboring land, changed their nationality to fake, but nowhere showed any signs of no assassins. Following the mountain roads and trails, they sought out the villages in the high mountains, disguised as the few populated people, but gradually felt like ghosts crossing each hilltop. Escaping is not just about moving the body, but trying to escape the memory itself. Wherever they lay their backs, the silhouette of the victim and the screams of torture still linger. Memories of the past, wounds that never heal. There is no peace for the soul of a killer. Sunset. As the sun sets, they remember the victim's figure, remember the bishop's face, remember the anguish in his last eyes. The sound of the wind whistling. In the mountain wind, they heard a whisper like, "This is the sweat and blood I have shed." Each time like that, their hearts felt like they were being squeezed. Broken dreams. They dream of holding a knife, then the handle breaks and falls, without the strength to pick it up. Dream of scent hounds following their footprints. Dream of themselves being dragged on the stone steps of a rampart. This obsession is like a scar spreading all over the body, aching every time the weather changes. 9.4. The finitude of human life. The final silence.
The ending is not a comfortable retirement, but an awareness of finitude. Lonely old age. When their hair turns white and their backs are bent, they can no longer escape. Every step is painful, sweat and blood seep from old wounds. Corrosive health. Skin lacerations, hot coal burns, ulcers that never heal. Plague, scabies, malaria lurk in every remote village. Death knell. When they heard the church bells ringing across the hillside, they thought the angel of death had called his roll, and knew that the end was near. They realized there was no final safe haven, only natural death, or a final predator. 9.5. Die without an identity. Farewell without anyone to remember. Unlike knights or heroes, assassins leave no tombstone, no inscription, no farewell. Unknown grave. After their last breath, no one gave them a proper burial. They were thrown into a mass grave, lying next to the bodies of unclaimed people. No legend, no names, no heroic stories. Instead, they became heretics, evil spirits in folk legends, associated with curses and tragedy. Traces obscured. Any relics carried, broken knives, torn clothes, shiny silver bags, were collected into the court treasury, turning into anonymous wealth. The assassin's life ended in silence.